right, we're good to go. So welcome everybody to our community call for the week. So for today, we got a couple agendas. One of them is to continue our deeper dive into the Pocket DNA. So we're gonna hear a bit more of the components of that DNA, as well as be able to share your thoughts on and then how far along the path we're gonna be to that unstoppable open data. So that's going to be pretty exciting. So, of course, Ben's going to help lead on that. And then afterwards, we're also going to have Evan and Sean coming from the open data community. That's going to come and talk to us more about what they're about. And yeah, I think it's pretty exciting. We have a lot of synergy between the two communities because we're all Web3 centric and in terms of our focus and what we wanted to do to drive the Web3 space. So we worked with them in the past as well and pretty happy. And yeah, so they want to come and show us what they're all about. And yeah, that's about it for me. And Ben, do you want to go on and take it?
Will do. Yeah, thanks, Ming. So hi, everyone. I've got Dermot here as well. We're going to chat about Pocket DNA. I'm going to just post a link in the chat so everyone can sort of go and see the latest description of what Pocket DNA is, if you haven't seen it already in the forum. I'm actually just going to share my screen because we've prepared the presentation in Menti because we do want to take your questions and sort of get some feedback as well on how you think we're living and representing the DNA of Pocket today. While I sort of open this up. Okay. It's a little tricky for me to switch between screens, but can everyone see Pocket DNA slide? Good. There's a lot of people in the chat. So it is actually up in the top left-hand corner. Cool. Looks like people can see it.
Yep.
Great. And you'll see there's a QR code up the top. There's a link with a code where you can manually check in. I'm presenting via Menti, so basically that allows you to do two things. We'll allow you to ask questions at any point. We'll capture all of those. We'll go back through them at the end and make sure that nothing's missed. Feel free to ask absolutely anything in there that you're sort of not sure about. And we'll also have some sort of questions for you guys as well to, like I said, let us know how you think we're going.
And just jumping in, I think JJMC13, if you could please mute yourself, and just while you're not speaking, if everyone could just please mute themselves.
Lovely. Thanks, Dermot.
Right noise.
Cool. So let's just recap. What is DNA actually about? It's really about creating alignment on our foundational beliefs. For those that were on the call, it was a couple of weeks ago, we sort of spoke about the fact that Pocket has a very compelling purpose, really strong mission, great set of values. Actually, a really awesome sort of mission statement existed already. But DNA is really just about refocusing on those foundational beliefs to unlock our capability to focus on other areas and how we sort of work together through the DAO and what we prioritize and focus on and move resources towards in how we do work together. So ultimately, it was about just refocusing on our mission, vision, and values, and creating opportunity, like we see here, for other ways that we can scale towards our success. So what we're going to do is we're just going to talk through what we created, which was this Pocket DNA statement. And the statement itself is unstoppable open data and open infrastructure that's governed by its users. It's actually pretty similar to the existing Pocket mission statement, perhaps a little bit shorter, but we think it captures pretty much the whole Pocket story within there. Yeah. The purpose of Pocket is to be an unstoppable protocol. It's why Pocket exists, to compete with the likes of Infura and Alchemy. We want to be a truly open source project, and an open community that collaborates through our values to reach that objective. The mission is really to deliver on the RPC trilemma and empower developers with the most reliable, performant and cost-effective data. And the ultimate vision is that as we achieve this, not only does Pocket become an important piece of global digital infrastructure and is owned and governed by its users, but also that we can light the way for others that are trying to do that too. We've already done that in some ways and shouldn't be shy about the fact that we've created a whole category of other infrastructure players in the RPC space that are also following us and contributing to this mission as well. And I think that's a helpful perspective to have, that even though we're competing on commercial terms, these other organisations are essentially on the same path as us to create this vision. And I think that's a really important part of our outlook to the global and to the wider ecosystem.
Yeah, I guess maybe quickly jump in. I guess don't want to spend too much time looking backwards, but I think if you look to kind of roughly this time last year, if not earlier, the community probably grew by a couple of orders of magnitude. And while there was a strong mission statement, and that kind of really helped with the narrative and kind of was a good North Star for kind of people joining the community, we didn't spend the time with new people joining to make sure they really understood what that meant and also kind of where we're going. So if you're gonna, when you're not actually working in the same office together, it's super important that you all understand what direction you're going, or otherwise you'll generate all of this work, but it can just be ultimately one crowd is pulling, the other's pushing, and you kind of get nowhere. So I think all of this is just making sure we're on the same page and ultimately making it easier for us to make decisions together when we're not in the same room. So we can all be working our asses off to deliver impact to the same kind of goals. And actually, this is all building up. I think we might even touch upon that in terms of, we'll be releasing kind of an ecosystem thesis next week that will show, by building on these foundations, we can actually really think about the projects we want to prioritize and the metrics we care about as well. But yeah, we can get into that later as well.
Absolutely. I think, just to illustrate on that, it is sometimes a little bit of a challenge with these sorts of things, because people think of these statements as being branding and marketing, and certainly they play a role in sort of communicating your ideas, but actually it's the fundamentals of how an organisation operates, and these different components here not only tell our story, but I think to Dermot's point, they're really instructive of how we can each align in terms of where we're going in future, get out of each other's way a little bit, not build in a whole heap of bureaucracy and permissioning, but feel confident that as we use our individual creativity, actually we're still all aligned in terms of what we're ultimately trying to build to. So to that point, we want to sort of unpack this a little bit more. I might go back to you, Dermot, just to sort of talk about this. But what is unstoppable? Dermot, over to you.
Yeah, sure. And I think we kind of have a bit of a breakthrough after we've been leading these different sessions, workshops with different kind of smaller groups across the community, as well as a kind of couple of open sessions. And as these kind of phrases and wording started to come out, and Ben put together that great narrative that kind of linked our purpose, our mission and vision, and kind of values together, that came out earlier this week. But as we're starting to unpack this, we kind of really had a couple of breakthroughs in realizing like what we're actually doing here. And the idea of being unstoppable actually makes us helped us reflect and realize, why, right? Why do we want to be unstoppable? And why do we care about decentralization? But if you actually look at Pocket's use case, by leaning into our decentralization in terms of supply, a broad and diverse supply side means we can actually have a really redundant, amazing, and also high performant, if we get it right, supply side of our marketplace. Decentralized demand actually means many gateways, and actually that means Pocket, unlike say some of our competitors, can actually serve many different customer types by enabling many gateways to spin up in different languages, different locales, for any kind of, source of potential demand in the world, which is pretty exciting. And it just shows you how Pocket can scale. And then you look at it across the other kind of areas of, if this is to work, can people actually want to stay? And like, what's Pocket's ultimate moat? Pocket has to be a public good, and that means we need to be representative of not just the supply side, also our demand, our builders, all of our stakeholders, and that's why kind of our governance can't be co-opted, and that's on the validator side as well as actually in our DAO as well. And then finally linking that to looking, I think probably pains for many in this space of if we really want to survive, we can't be reliant on a couple of, whatever you want to describe them, the current exchanges that we're currently listed on. There needs to be a real diverse, capital markets, and they need to be decentralized as well for Pocket to truly succeed. And that actually also means, integration into kind of the main decentralized markets on Ethereum and the other L2s means kind of many different listings. We need many different kind of custodian partners. So that's kind of all of the wider piece. And this is all kind of leaning into decentralization. And actually, interestingly, there's a great article back in 2019 from Jill Monegro, a placeholder, about sovereign crypto networks, and actually talks about this, saying how the world's largest and most successful networks will be those that are the most sovereign, as they will have the easiest time convincing miners, users, and investors to commit their time, work, and money to their growth. And the way they actually described it was actually what we were already talking about in terms of decentralizing supply, demand, governance, and capital markets. So yeah, it was kind of a neat breakthrough for us, and also kind of gave greater meaning to what we mean to be unstoppable.
Awesome. Thank you, Ben. So if we just think about this, we've sort of got our purpose, we've got our story. Yeah. What we're looking at here is, what does this actually mean? What are the things that we sort of need to be building or creating to sort of achieve that objective? And now the question sort of goes across to you. The question is, like, how unstoppable are we today? If you have a think about these dimensions, and you were to say, do we have decentralized supply? Do we have decentralized governance, et cetera, where would you say that we are on this journey? I'm really interested to sort of see where people are at around this today. So if you're in Menti, you should have the ability now to sort of rate these against very centralized versus very decentralized. And would love to just see what you think about, where we're at today. Happy for people to jump in and share verbally as well perspectives that they have, or perhaps Dermot to jump in as well. But yeah, where would you rate Pocket today, and how unstoppable are we?
Nice, for certain results come in. Yeah, we'll be releasing that thesis early next week, and so that's actually going to touch on these elements and what we're doing to solve some of the problems we see. And it's good from these kind of results so far. They're kind of aligning around what we believe as well in terms of where our weaknesses are. But I guess the interesting thing about strategy is it's all about trade-offs, and sometimes you absolutely want to improve your weaknesses, but also you actually, if you have advantages, you want to lean into them too. And I think it's fair to say our supply side is pretty decentralized, but actually there's certain kind of sources that are probably doing more realizing than others, or actually in terms of actually the types of node runners, there could be more different types, whether it's kind of validators for other networks, we could be onboarding and so on and so forth. And there's definitely gaps in our governance, particularly on the validator side. Financing, I think it's pretty clear we're pretty reliant on a couple of exchanges that aren't that robust. And on our demand side, we're fully reliant on P&I. So I think this is kind of playing out so far in our results. I'm keen for anyone else to kind of speak to how they rated this or what their thinking is. Not too sure if that's Morse code or not.
Well, that's helpful. Just to sort of get us started. We have a few more opportunities for people to jump in, so certainly keen to hear from people verbally if they feel comfortable to. Let's sort of keep going. So same again. Like we say we want to be an open source project. We say we want to be sort of an open and collaborative community. What does that actually mean? And we sort of had a look at the values that Pocket's sort of always spoken about, and basically a set of values and behaviours that are aligned to more broadly this idea of an open organisation. And there's 5 values that sort of sit underneath that. There's transparency, collaboration, inclusivity, adaptability, and community. Now, the thing with values is that they're what actually drives our behaviour, but often it's much easier to just think about what those specific behaviours are so that we can really understand, sort of, you know it when you see it, you know it when you don't see it. So what we've done is we've started to articulate some behaviours that sit behind it, that we really want to see the community adopting, and that we think can allow us to work really productively and effectively together, regardless of what sort of situation or context we're operating in. So for transparency, the behaviour that we're hoping to drive towards is this idea of default to open. It's a slight tweak on the sort of idea of expressing why something should be open, to instead expressing why something should be closed. Okay, this really does include keeping sensitive information safe. This does not mean everything is open. It really means that the bias is towards open whenever possible. Inclusivity is really about being welcoming. It's about creating a space for anyone to participate. And to do that, you really just have to start by assuming positive intent around the way that people are coming and presenting to you. This is, I think, a really, really important part of how we create a place where positive conversations can happen, particularly when we think about proposals or other sort of items that can be, by definition, putting people in on different sides or bringing different perspectives close together. Collaboration is around ideas over egos. Community is about being highly aligned and loosely coupled, which is really what we're doing here right now. And then adaptability is just this idea of faster learning beats better planning. My major critique, I think, of the DAO space in general is that there's way more time spent on debate often than there is in execution. And that can be really difficult. We need to focus more on how we build prototypes and how we experiment our way through learning towards the right answer, as opposed to thinking the idea is going to hit us like a thunderbolt from the sky. So this is really just like the starting point of this. I think different teams in the ecosystem have their own cultures, which we strongly support and want to see as well. We think different people will interpret these values in different ways and think of other important behaviours that they want to see, which will be added to this story over time as well. But to get started right now, what we're focusing on is these 5 values and these 5 behaviours as things that we want to start building into the way that just becomes our common operating way. And I've already spoken with Ming and others around how moderators and other roles in the ecosystem can support us to really start to live these values as best we can. Dermot, is there anything you want to add before we maybe check in with the community where they think we're at on this?
No, I think it's great. I think you've nailed it in terms of thinking about speed. It's such an advantage in startups generally, and actually, I think too many DAOs actually just slow themselves down with bureaucracy for the sake of it, without actually thinking that, as you said, kind of you need to engage in intelligent experimentation and kind of use the scientific method, have a hypothesis, test it, learn, iterate, and kind of keep what works and kind of ditch what doesn't. So I guess that is just something we can hopefully get to. And actually, when you look across the open source kind of world at large, which is where it's been really successful, is actually engaging in these kind of open and quick experiments.
Nice. So let's hear from you guys. Same again. You've got the opportunity on Menti to just sort of tell us what you see today. We don't have to sugarcoat it. If we think there's things we're not doing well, this is aspirational in the start today of how we define, measure, and push towards these sorts of values and behaviours a little bit more. But we'd really love to see how transparent, adaptable, inclusive, collaborative, and community-minded you sort of think we are today. again, feel free to just sort of speak up or express your perspective verbally as well. If have strong opinions around things that you're seeing or not seeing, this is really your story to write.
Do you want to do that annoying teacher thing and maybe try to call people out, Ben? Anyone quite good at responding to this?
I think we definitely can. Yeah, you got someone in mind?
I mean, Mike, if you're willing to speak up, and then maybe whoever speaks has the pleasure of calling someone else out, perhaps. But yeah, I mean, anyone, please do speak out. It'd be interesting to get anyone's take, however small. No one's got brave enough, it seems. Yeah, I guess, Ben, yeah, maybe it would be interesting to get your take just on other orgs you've been in. I mean, you've kind of, you are the kind of the org designer, or even Jack kind of getting his experience. But yeah, I guess kind of seeing different DAOs, orgs in and outside of crypto, things you've seen, and maybe how you kind of think about Pocket as well, because I guess this has kind of been the birth of DNA in the first place.
Yeah, I'm able to jump in quickly. I think the image represented on the screen right now is a pretty good example of it for me. I think Pocket has a fantastic culture. I think sometimes we maybe aren't always best at expressing the ways in which we sort of are in agreement. And that can tend to feel like there's like significant disagreement. But when you're 80 or 90% of the way there, it is something you sort of need to check in on regularly and just sort of remind yourself that, hey, we're all here, we all share the same DNA, even if we do disagree. It is in purpose or in pursuit of finding the best way forward of shared objectives. So I think we've got a really strong culture here at Space. We can certainly continue to improve on that. But really for me, it's around how we make this culture a productive organisation culture to execute and deliver. And I think that does involve being a little bit more open. It does mean experimenting more. It does mean accepting that there's no magical the solution or the answer or the idea. There's just a lot of experiments that give you information and tell you what the right solution is over time. And I think that's the huge opportunity space for Pocket today is to lean into that more. What about someone else? Maybe Jack, keen to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, to be honest, I think some of these axes that you've mapped out here, I would maybe even say where we have a little bit more work to do than has been illustrated here. Just from obviously the last year has been quite a tense year. It's not fun seeing the value of all of our assets go down like it has, and that has led to tension in general, which has really, for example, I would say has impacted on assumptions of positive intent, and has maybe detracted from behaving as a true open organization. But I think we're trending in the right direction, which is really positive. And I think, keeping these values in mind and constantly working towards improving on each of these axes will ultimately deliver really high impact. As a DAO, we'll become a lot more effective, and then be able to produce a lot more value for everyone in the ecosystem.
Great, thank you. We're going to be talking about these a lot more, so I might keep moving for now in the interest of time. And then data. What is data? I think we all are familiar now with the idea of Olshansky's RPC trilemma. I think it's a really really helpful way for us to be thinking about how we're executing on our mission. The idea behind how we are creating a usable and valuable an incrementally better product than is available in the market for developers. It really is the core of what Pocket is about. So I don't plan to sort of pause on this one for too long, although Dermot or anyone else is welcome to jump in. But I think it's useful to just sort of check in how we think we're performing here today. I see different builder teams on this call, from Pocket Fund to P&I. How are we actually going on this today? Are we the most reliable? Are we the most performant? Are we the most cost effective? Where does it actually sit today? I think it's really be really fascinating to get some feedback on that.
Maybe just chipping in to say one thing. I think I don't have the previous mission statement in front of me, but I do remember it called out the supply side, but I don't think it actually called out the demand side specifically. And a good mission does articulate exactly who you do and who should care about that. And obviously, we have many stakeholders within this ecosystem, particularly because it's decentralized. But I think it's unbelievably important to really, spell out what you care about, because actually, without any demand, all of this goes away. So we need a great product. And I think having a kind of a really strong focus on that is just really helpful for aligning us on what matters, what needs to be done, what are the jobs to be done, where can people work to improve as well. And interesting, I think I'd largely agree with what's been said here.
I think so. Just taking time. I know our friends from ODC are here, so I don't want to sort of keep us from that. So I'm just going to keep going. I want to share this next slide, which is really about our vision. As we expressed earlier, the idea is to not only become a world sort of scale piece of digital infrastructure. It really is about this being owned and governed by its users. Yep. The DAO's not going anywhere. It is as linked to our purpose as the protocol is. It really is about achieving this sort of vision together so that we have a different world than we have today. It is the whole purpose, essentially, of an open internet, or Web3, is to have users in control of their own data, in control of their own infrastructure. This is a really critical component of it. If we don't think that's sort of where we're going, there's probably not much point in sort of being here and pushing forward in the way that we are. So incredibly important that we're all aligned around this vision as well. And in terms of getting towards that vision, we've sort of set out here these different models of how we think about it. We've set out some of the dimensions that we're operating within. But just to call it out directly, there's space for everyone within this to contribute. And it's useful to understand the ways or the highest leverage points for each of us to sort of make contributions here. When we think about creating an unstoppable protocol, operating a DAO, allowing Pocket to be something that's truly unstoppable and censorship resistant, that really is a core component of what PNF's role is as the credibly neutral steward of the organisation. When we think of an open community, that's not for someone to define other than the community themselves. So this idea of how we're open, how we do transparency, what are our values, and how do we operationalize those, is a huge opportunity space for the community to take on more and contribute more around what that looks like. And then obviously today, data, how that is packaged, how that meets our customers, how we iterate on that and provide bigger opportunities for people to work through the Pocket protocol, really sits with P&I, the node runners and the builders in this space. And that's not to say we don't work together on all of these things. It's not to say that they don't overlap. But I think it is helpful to think a little bit about, what are these higher leverage points for each of us to be involved, and how can we focus in on that in full understanding that you're going to have support and resources at your back to be able to deliver on that if that's what you need to do. So to that point, I think what we want to do now is start bringing people into this a little bit more. So Dermot, pass to you to just sort of talk about the contest.
Sure, and I'll keep it quick. So I shared a post on the forum earlier on the DNA thread, and it links to this contest. And I guess maybe the background to this is actually, so when Ben and I were kind of actually trying to make these statements come to life and like making it more visual, and we had this great narrative, and Ben did this amazing first draft using Midjourney that he just kind of hacked together overnight. And we're talking about it. This is a cool first draft. Like, how do we improve it? Then we're realizing, why is it up to us? Why should we kind of do another 5 or 6 iterations to get what we view to be perfect? Actually, it's really the communities. So actually, then we just kind of got excited by the idea of this. Like, yeah, let's hand it over. Let's kind of, we've armed people with the foundations. Let's kind of set up a contest. Give a reasonable prize and let people play around with it. And actually, thinking of what's next and where we can go with our DNA, I think actually on the narrative building side, and actually thinking of, we've had pretty, dog shit comms, branding and marketing and design over the last kind of few years for a number of different reasons, but actually that's a big investment we're making with at the PNF over the kind of coming months. And also we want to be inspired by what the community thinks, what they think could be a great idea for this DNA in terms of how it could be phrased on a website, a tagline, could be a redesigning this whole DNA handbook that Ben put together. It just could be a cool, it could be a song, it could be anything. So it's kind of an opportunity for everyone to get stuck in, to play around with it, bring other people in from outside the community, or else just to collaborate with someone else in the community you haven't collaborated with before. And one person's good at design, one person's good at, ideas, and just work together. So if you haven't had a chance, nobody's kept a submission yet because it's only been up a few hours, but I've just kind of added the link in the chat. So please do have a go. Do submit. You can submit up to 3 submissions per wallet, and as it kind of says, the kind of idea is to build on the DNA statements, to tell the story of the Pocket's DNA, to how we improve the aesthetic and design, or even the overall brand and personality of Pocket. So do submit, and if you have any issues with using Polygon or the platform, just give me a shout, and also I can, if you really need some Matic, I can also give you send you some from my wallet as well. It's about $3 to make a submission, so it's very cheap, and you have until end of Tuesday UTC next week, so probably mid-afternoon kind of Eastern Tuesday next week. So yeah, please do give it a shot. Get creative, and I look forward to kind of then the voting beginning next Wednesday. It will be interesting to see what everyone thinks.
Yeah, we're definitely paying out for the best idea. And yeah, to Dermot's point, it can be large or small. If you want to design a whole new aesthetic for Pocket that you think captures that DNA, or if you just want to give us an idea of some small enhancement, it does not matter. What's important is that we crowdsource your voice, your insights, your ideas into how we take this forward. So very excited for that. Which sort of brings us to the end. There were no questions through the session, which is either we've done a good job or we don't understand Menti and how to ask questions, or neither of those. But keen to see, is there any questions around DNA, anything that we haven't captured, anything that you saw today that you're not sure about? This isn't the end of DNA. This is really just the beginning of giving you the framing and sharing some ideas around things that you will see and how we invest resources, how we measure our performance as a project. But anything that people want to ask right now, please let us know. I can sit in silence forever, but maybe best to keep on moving. You can reach Dermot, myself, Jack, Ming, anyone if you wanted to talk about this more. Otherwise, Ming, back to you and our friends at ODC.
Awesome, thank you. So yeah, next one on our agenda is with ODC. So Evan and Sean has joined us today for some discussion regarding their community and to give us a little more view of what they're all about. So I will go ahead and hand it over to Evan, and then we can get started.
Hey, thank you. And thanks for having us. I think it'll just be myself. This is Evan, and I don't think Sean is on. Some significant shoes to follow, if you will, or act to follow, whatever the metaphor is, because that was pretty freaking clear, and it kind of is an example of what brought us to collaborate with Pocket in the first place, which is frankly some conversations. So we do have some slides. I posted them. I think somebody's going to share them as well. We can kind of flip through along those lines also. But what I would say as we start to kick off quickly is the open data community is a community set up to really try to decentralize and use for good data science. And so in a sense, it should be we should be, the community, ODC community should be power use. And I think Ben is pulling up the slide, so thanks for doing that, Ben. We should be power users. We are ideologically and otherwise 1,000% aligned with Pocket. And yeah, that's a little bit about us. You're going to hear about, you're going to hear from me here. Just so you know, I'm kind of I like to say post-career. I don't know, a lot of open source experience over the years. And I came to Gitcoin and got involved as a steward, so in meta governance. And then you can find me on Telegram, elsewhere as ePowell101. And what we saw was there was a need to have folks that we now call regen rangers, who are data scientists applying their skills, algorithms, etc., for good, and to build this in the public as an open source community. So when in doubt, check us out on GitHub. That's where a lot of the action is. I know it's not as decentralized as we would like, but there it is. It's open source. And what you see, amongst other things, is a bunch of algorithms that are used to identify Sybils, right? Which we can talk a lot about. You might be able to find your way towards a reference list of Sybils, which can be really useful for training models to identify Sybils. What else you'll find there are some sandbox projects. These are pieces of software that the community has started to build to enable groups that are doing airdrops or funding rounds or what have you to kind of use the data science in a more consumable way. So yeah, that's me. That's a little bit about the ODC. I wanted to just update you on what's going on now. I think that this next slide, re-centralization is an existential risk. I mean, yeah, if you're here, you probably believe this. Just as an aside, not sure a lot of data analysts get it. And we certainly do in the ODC, and we're getting more louder and louder as we sort of earn some credibility to make the point that it's not enough to have a decentralized Ethereum level if we're then all getting access to that data through one of a handful of controllable, centralized, non-open source pipes. It's not enough. It leaves us subject to capture, censorship. And by the way, it can be freaking slow and expensive, which are two pieces that really matter to our persona, right? Yeah. Decentralization, centralization. What I really want is access to the data fast and without spending a lot of money. Well, there are techniques like connecting an index potentially to Pocket, which is something that we had people doing in our last hackathon. So I won't belabor this one. Maybe we can just flip through a couple more, Ben, and thanks again for doing this. And shout out questions, or this is a good one because it might make it a little more tangible. Or put them on the chat, or however you want to, or whatever. Add ePal 101 and tweet out to me like, WTF is this guy talking about, or what have you. So here, what we have are activities within the last couple of days, and it's kind of in fine print, so you may not be able to read them all. But we've gone from a community that was kind of a glimmer in our eye in the September of last year timeframe. We had a big funding round coming up at Gitcoin. We were talking about decentralizing ourselves, and we kind of looked in the mirror and said, yeah, great, but we're a silo of data scientists. We're the black box in the corner protecting this round, but also that means sometimes squelching people, i.e. not allowing them to vote or participate. That doesn't make sense. How do we decentralize ourselves? And that's, again, where ODC came from. So we're just a couple of hackathons in, a couple of funding rounds that we've protected for Gitcoin in now. And now you're starting to see community stuff happen, which is to say, I don't know, communities talking about people, members of the community, like, for example, upper left-hand corner, I think, is a data scientist whose day job I happen to know is in a very large Web2 e-commerce firm. And she spoke at Eat Samba. And she did talk about, she told me to mention, make sure they know I talked about using Pocket and advocated for it along with other things in her presentation. This Bacalao project, I'm speaking at a thing at their Compute on Data Summit in May in Boston. And it's a Protocol Labs, so the folks, of course, behind IPFS, et cetera, project that is pretty exciting. And so, now we've had them on our Twitter space, and now we're starting to speak at their events. Just another example. Or in the upper right-hand corner, a couple of you may possibly know TJ or Thomas, who is the creator of TrueBlocks, which is an open source indexing solution. I did not see this talk, but apparently he spoke about Mennonites and Web3, which is pretty cool. And so on and so forth. There's a sandbox creator in the lower left-hand corner. This is a new project that this former Protocol Labs engineer is starting to house within the open data community. So there's a lot happening, and you're all welcome. This is your community. If you believe in decentralization and you're interested in that layer, half a step, 2 steps above Pocket, like, okay, great. We now, thanks to Pocket, we now have this decentralized layer of RPCs, et cetera. Let's not then centralize it again. Yeah, and this next slide kind of gets to areas of potential Pocket collaboration. There's a lot of, there's some builds, so I apologize for that. There's a lot of potential areas of intersection. We do have these hackathons, and in them and in our artifacts, written documents, et cetera, we say, hey, data scientists, you don't have to do that. You can use Pocket. Within those hackathons, as well as just advising that, we have little quests. So as opposed to a data science bounty, this would be more of a, hey, do a few things and maybe you'll get rewarded. And an example would be, show us your ETL starting with, or your data pipeline starting with Pocket. So we're doing that kind of work, and we think there's natural crossover here. I'll talk about data sets here in a second because it's something that's fairly new that is really hitting. Potential, we think we're very aligned with Pocket. And so, when I was lucky enough to meet a few folks at ETH Denver. One thing that I mentioned is we'd love help on the governance side. And I do have one or two slides on where we are in our governance journey. But if that were of interest, again, it's our community, meaning your community, as well as just the handful of folks who helped start it over the last, let's say 6 months. Just in terms of numbers, there's probably a dozen folks who are really at the core in terms of being on every day. We're all volunteers. There's about 300, I guess 500 folks showed up around a hackathon, of which, I was checking, about 300 are on Discord. And so, it definitely peaks massively around a hackathon. And we have a hackathon, about a 40K-ish, 45K maybe hackathon kicking off in a couple of weeks. So we kind of expand as the hackathon happens. And then there's usually about a dozen or more now getting their hats. We'll talk about that in governance in a second, who are kind of core contributors today, all volunteers. So throw me questions. There's a couple more slides. This one I like, although it's arguably the ugliest of them all, and that's saying something. But this notion of a shared public data set that it's actually, it looks centralized, but it's, stored, sharded out onto IPFS itself of known Sybils. We think this is really valuable, and it's the kind of ongoing curation that we need to do, because I'll just, hop up on a soapbox for a second. We can't keep doing Arbitrum type stuff. I mean, amen, go Arbitrum, love the foundation and go. But really, what percent of that airdrop was farmed? Pretty high. And actually, that's a question we seek to answer in the next hackathon. It's a high number. Or NFTs, really cool for artists, unless all the volume goes to Blur, where you have a handful of whales, playing ping pong back and forth or amongst themselves, basically wash trading things and forcing the artist to set the royalties to zero, because there's no way you can have that kind of trading volume and pay X percent out to an artist. So now you've got Sybil-like behavior, right? In this case, I'm talking about wash trading on Blur, that is actually causing folks to back away from one of the more exciting things in Web3 in the first place, which is this notion of on-chain, fair, transparent royalties. So what we're saying is, let's use data. And in fact, let's keep an eye on folks who do that sort of behavior, and let's train our models against them. But maybe there's more we could do as well with that. And to be clear, when you say them, it could be a network of 5,000 wallets, right? That algorithms have ascertained are actually one, centrally controlled entity. So that's what this slide is about. Is there's a little bit of work that goes into curating that and making sure we're trusted, and that we also, you have to have an appeals process, because while we try to set false positives as low as possible, they happen. And so especially if you have not developed on-chain signals, i.e. you're new to Web3, that would suck, right? If you somehow be shadow banned. So we can't have that. It's got to be quite transparent for folks as well. But that's the kind of work that we think is a public good that the ODC, Open Data Community, does and has to do. Double clicked on that one because I love it. I won't go through the next couple of slides. Are just, we think, so it's 100% open source. It's non-commercial. We exist based on hackathons, support from folks like Gitcoin and others, Ocean, and so we think there's benefits to everyone. Three main personas, with three stakeholders: the data scientists and the underlying software projects, and there's contributions they all make. So together we can protect the commons. That is the. Oh, sorry. I can. And that is the website. Thank you, Jam. It's about to get nicer looking, by the way. The designer who helped up-level these slides a little bit is working on the website. So it'll look less like something I hacked together on GitHub soon. But anyway, Data Builders Hackathon, we had a hackathon. Let's just flip through these couple. I want to leave, we're about 5 minutes from time. But we had a hackathon that ended, it was about 2.5 to 3x bigger than the first one we had. And Pocket did help us here. And thank you for that. And there's a hackathon coming on the 25th, i.e. 12 days away. So that's going to be pretty exciting. It's focused on identifying Sybils again, but also applying those same algorithms or seeing how applicable they are, the scientific mindset, to adjacent domains. Like we have someone from Pantera Capital and I think Multicoin and some others as judges who are going to help us judge not just on how good a job does it do at predicting and demonstrating, revealing wash trading, but also does it make sense to them as somebody from more of the DeFi world. So that hackathon is coming up in, as I said, less than 2 weeks. Yeah, we are trying to be transparent. And, you know, this is some of what we learned from the hackathon. I would just say that our reach right now exceeds our grasp, right? We have a lot of interest across these domains. There's other data sets that are related, that even ETL, which are pipelines that people want us to help curate. We've gone from, should we have sandbox open source projects to like maybe half a dozen. There's another one coming in today. And we have, the hackathons. So there's a lot, and we have the governance, which is the next couple slides. I think we get to, we're instituting something that we call Regen Rangers, which I've alluded to, which are basically data scientists for good, but we want them, just flip on. We want all of us to kind of earn our reputation. There it is, right? So it's not just Regen Rangers, AKA whatever, friends of Evan. No. Actually, almost none of us have met in person. We're all over the world. Got a lot of folks in Africa, all over though. But no, you earn your status, and then it gets recognized and codified via something called the HATS protocol, which is a semi-fungible token underneath. And then you become a voter on how we allocate resources. So if you're into jamming on any of this or other related subjects that I've mentioned, you can see we're building our governance in the public. We're trying to protect Web3 from Sybils and related bad actors. We're writing software and algorithms. Then please stop by and say hi. There's a lot. Like Pocket has to do well, right? So stick to your knitting as well here. But if there are areas that you see that you might want to contribute or course correct us or give us feedback, please do. We're over on that website listed, opendatacommunity.org. You can get to that underlying GitHub. You can get us on Twitter and elsewhere. So I'll stop talking. I feel like that. I did take a couple breaths, but I was a little bit of a fire hose, and see if there are a couple questions or comments in the last minute or two before we drop.
Any questions from anyone?
Yeah, I just want to say, wow, this is amazing. I love what you guys are doing here. I do have a question about how you guys are thinking about, or if you guys are thinking about like social biases that can come and influence the decisions. So one of the things that I think MakerDAO is kind of currently looking into is kind of like they do see that there is some biases that come over in DAOs because you are either person who talks a lot, or kind of you gain that reputation of social reputations by just being being around, rather than you gaining you doing something as like gaining a bit more like expertise, that you've kind of shown that you have done something. Yeah, I'm just wondering if you guys have thought about that in terms of conscious and unconscious bias into this whole what you guys are building.
It's a great question. We've thought about it both from the standpoint, and I don't think we have a complete answer, to be open, both in terms of our own governance and in terms of protecting that governance elsewhere. And certainly within and around the quadratic funding community, of which Gitcoin is, a big part, I would guess. There's this notion of DSOC where you would potentially weight, just as an example, like you could weight votes based, you could look at example, evidence of collusion essentially in the voting itself, right? So you'd really double down on this notion of, it's not just that you're following the crowd or that you're a crowd colluding, but independence of thought. And that's really interesting to us. It is also possible to hack that, right? And so we would play a role then in, or Sybil attack it, in trying to identify whether there are Sybil attacks of that. That's just a particular case. But it's a great question. Yeah, it really is. In our case, we're trying again to have these regen rangers be have very specific criteria, and then we have a related group we're calling them ODC Jedi today, which are folks who kind of earn stripes in the community. And I don't know, so we're trying to split that a little bit, maybe do a little bit of division of labor and checks and balances, if you will. But yeah, love to jam with you on that one. But yeah, we try to protect those sorts of approaches and try to be cognizant of them to the extent we can as well.
Yeah, thank you so much for that answer. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to take too much time, but yeah, I think that's a really good way. And I'm wondering if you guys were thinking about anonymity as a possible solution to that kind of problem with the reputation aspect of that you guys are developing, because that would kind of weed out the social aspect of things.
Yep. Yeah, and certainly we're philosophically, folks in the community, myself included, would say we're not in favor necessarily of sorry, but WorldCoin, or give me your retina scan and go the other direction.
Yeah,
for lots of obvious reasons. And so we're all about enabling us to have anonymity or sort of anonymous identities. But then it does raise the question of, okay, right, but if I spin up 10,000 of those, what am I going to do to your airdrop, right? So that's right. We think we help protect that space because it's really important for some of the reasons you're raising and others. Yeah. Anonymity is crucial, I would argue.
Yeah, so I'm guessing the initial kind of question is to solve for the Sybil attacks and then, go the anonymity, right? Anonymity route, because if you solve for the Sybil attack, you verify that that person is actually a person who has one vote, or that is one person in the community, and then you kind of weed out that social aspect. And I'd love to kind of talk to you a bit more about that. I've been following your work on Twitter, so yeah, big fan of yours.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for asking the questions. I'm sensitive to time. I'm here all day, so I'm happy to keep going. Other questions, but also Ming and Ben and others.
Yeah,
who want to drop, feel free. But yeah, what do you think, Ming?
Yeah, I mean, if there's folks are okay, if there's another question, we can certainly do that. But other than that, I think we could be pretty good.
Any other questions? Yep.
Yeah. I can speak, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I've been following from the beginning here, and this technological know-how and the hackathon program and all you have been doing here. I was wanting to know, are your ambassadors also involved in publishing or all the technicalities that was presented today? Because I think there are just so much, and it's quite difficult for a Web2 user. It's quite difficult for an early Web2 user to understand the hackathon programs, to understand the technologies that you guys are bringing on board. So I was wanting to know, you have started onboarding ambassadors to do these breakdowns, right?
Yes. You can gain points, let's say, and hence governance both through as an ambassador. Yes. Onboarding them might be a little bit strong of a term, just to be clear. It's Pocket is more evolved, more developed, built out, and thought through than ODC is at this point to be open. But yes, we're very much encouraging ambassadors, and we, by intent, would like to be supportive of them. It just may not be a very smooth process to be open, But that's part of what we can work on together, I hope.
Accepting applications as it has started going through, right?
Yeah. The channel would be outreach. And we have weeklies, so they're on Thursdays as it happens. And then we also have a backlog of, we call them issues, but they're just things to do out on GitHub. And so that's the way you would see just a pulse of that kind of activity. And Discourse, the outreach channel, is where we're kind of helping. You might be, somebody's suggesting you might be, Ming?
Yeah.
I don't know if this question is more for, are you asking for about ODC or?
Both? Well, for us, for Pocket, for Ambassador Program, it's currently open right now for applications. And the link, you can find them actually within our announcement channel. So feel free to take a look there, and you'll find the details as well to where the program details are listed or in their form. And you can go ahead and read about it as well. And if interested, you can go ahead and apply for it. And so that is open as well on our end.
Got it. I also made the trade and published it. I published it too, so other people can apply.
Yeah, well, it's open for everyone to apply right now. But it will be going through basically a review process to see who we choose to follow up on. Because we're not gonna be bringing a huge army of ambassadors, of course. So we will be choosing who we're gonna be looking at possibly continuing the additional conversations. But feel free for anyone to apply for it.
No concern. Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, any other questions for either myself or Evan or Ben? Okay. If not, I think we can go ahead and wrap up this call. Thank you, everyone, for joining. And we'll see you next week. And looking forward to other topics of discussion we can get into. Take care.
Yep. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
Really
you.
appreciate it.